Welcome to Mirrors or Water. In this video, we will be uncovering the story hidden within John Frusciante's fifth solo album, The Will to Death. Although he has not publicly discussed The Will to Death as a concept album, I believe John quietly released it with the intention that a central narrative could be interpreted from it. This would not be the only concept album John has released. His 2009 album, The Empyrean, was promoted as a concept album, writing on his website. The Empyrean is my new record. It is a concept record that tells a single story, both musically and lyrically. The story takes place within one person, and there are two characters. The main character is a creative person who experiences the full spectrum of life's ups and downs. All dialogue takes place in his mind. The other character could accurately be called the creative force, which constantly creates and perpetuates existence. Through the lyrics of The Empyrean, John weaves the creative force through the album. But its story is not an easy thing to identify, writing on his website. My describing The Empyrean as a story is accurate from my viewpoint, but misleading, as there are no road signs to lead someone else to perceive a clear story out of it. The Will to Death also tells a single story and features the same two characters. But where the Empyrean story is abstract and hard to perceive, The Will to Death contains a few lyrical road signs that come from events in John's life. One example is in the song Lost, where he sings, "We left the seasons back in Longtown. There was a hint of sadness going round. We met the brothers who drove arrows and shot assumption wide and narrow." In this song, he sings about his experience as a member of the Red Hot Chili Peppers as they look for a new label to sign with. During their search, the Warner Brothers label flew the band around on their corporate jet, as Anthony Kiedis wrote in his book Scar Tissue. Warner Brothers had flown us to one of our concerts in their corporate jet. The brothers who drove arrows are the Warner Brothers executives in their corporate jet. And the seasons back in Longtown is referring to the Four Seasons in Los Angeles. In another quote from Scar Tissue, Anthony writes, "The entire brass of Epic Sony Records flew us out to the Four Seasons in LA for a lavish brunch to celebrate the band choosing to sign with the label." One reason for the lyric "a hint of sadness was going round" may have come from the complications with Sony Epic getting them out of their contract with EMI. The delay in starting on their new album must have been frustrating for Frusciante. He discussed this situation during an interview on Rick Rubin's podcast.
I remember we gotten to the point where it seemed like we were ready to make an album, and then there was some record label stuff going on where we weren't allowed to go into the studio.
Yeah, we decided that there was no way we were going to be on EMI anymore because they were taking too much control away from the band. We didn't have artistic final say. Mm-hmm. And so we really wanted to be with a label that trusted us and was going to allow us to be ourselves and allow us to have artistic final say. And it turned out there were several who were willing to give us that. And so it was hard for somebody to talk EMI out of letting us go. But Mo Austin made a deal with them and made a deal with us. And that was the label that we felt comfortable with.
As you can see, John's lyrics can be written in a way that disguises their meaning, but with the proper context, patterns will start to emerge. And in the case of Lost, there was a way to interpret the lyrics that gave the song new meaning. For the album as a whole, all of the lyrics help in portraying a central narrative. However, the amount of context required to interpret each lyric would unnecessarily complicate this video. They reference many other lyrics in his discography, and also topics like symbolism, philosophy, theology, and psychology. For this video, I'm going to limit my commentary on these subjects and focus on the central narrative of the album. The central narrative of The Will to Death tells the story of John and his relationship with the creative force during his first stint with the Red Hot Chili Peppers, leading up to his departure in 1992. The first two songs, A Doubt and An Exercise, take place around the time of Mother's Milk. In Time Runs Out, John experiences a profound change in his worldview while on break following the Mother's Milk tour. He signs the record deal with Warner Brothers in the song Lost. Unchanging, The Mirror, A Loop, Wishing, and Far Away all take place after the release of Blood, Sugar, Sex, Magic. They are about his new relationship with success and losing his connection to creativity. The Days Have Turned takes place after he left the band. Helical is an instrumental that transitions us to the album's final song and title track, The Will to Death, where John sings in retrospective from the time of recording. Now, let's go back to the beginning again. A Doubt starts the album off with a question. Everyone wonders, who am I? This is the perfect question to ask when starting a journey of self-discovery. But joining the band at such a young age, it must have been near impossible for the confident teenager to answer. This journey eventually leads him to someone with the lyrics, "I wind up next to you." I interpret this as the teenage John coming into contact with the personification of the creative force, which is related to his higher self. But at this point in his life, he is more interested in the rock and roll lifestyle.
The first couple of years I was in the Chili Peppers, it was more about like getting tattoos and coloring my hair and, presenting a certain image to people, going out after girls and that kind of thing.
One of John's philosophical influences, Krishnamurti, talks about doubt as a precursor to moving from one state of consciousness to another.
Our consciousness is made up of its content. Our consciousness is our beliefs, our desires, our anxieties, fears, pleasures, hypocrisy, vanity, our gods, our beliefs, all that is our consciousness. If you doubt what you are, which is your consciousness, if you doubt that, begin to question that, then perhaps the mind can go beyond that consciousness.
He needs the ability to doubt his preconceived notions so that he can open his mind to the bigger picture, but chose to ignore these insights with the lyrics, "One simple means is to leave it by the door." An exercise builds on the theme of the young and naive John from a doubt, but adding a feeling of arrogance to the lyrics with the opening, "Learning there's nothing to gain from advice," followed by a direct reference that indicates the two songs are related with, "Hey doubt, come on around anytime." But this version of John is about to change in the next song, where one host is going to teach how to die. Time Runs Out is the most mysterious song on the album. The lyrics are symbolic and are quite difficult to summarize without spiraling into a sea of explanations. The song is sung from the perspective of the personification of the creative force, who can be considered his higher self, who is not perceived by John as symbolized by the lyrics, "I've been asleep on top of myself." Sonically and lyrically, it is broken into two sections that are separated by the lyrics, "In these times, time runs out." The first half is the conclusion of the previous two songs and takes place after the Mother's Milk tour. There was a moment when time ran out for John and changed his outlook both musically and personally. He discussed this moment during an interview on Rick Rubin's podcast.
So the band was really rocking after Mother's Milk Live. And now it's time to make the next album, and that's when we started working together. And tell me from your perspective, what was the experience like of making Blood Sugar Sex Magic?
Well, pretty much right around that time that we played at the Greek, I guess we had we took a couple of months off, and during that couple of months, I really was, and around that time, I remember and a lot of things were lining up for me as a musician and as a person right around that time. And I just had some epiphanies in terms of taking the direction of my playing and my songwriting in a different direction.
In the second half of the song, the lyrics hint at a symbolic death with, "I've been sleeping once and for all." This is a different type of sleeping than in the previous half. Before the epiphanies, the personification of the creative force or higher self was not perceived by John. The second form of sleeping is once and for all, implying a permanence, like a death. Or, like in his song God, where he sings, "I built you to sleep, that's the idea of dying, but you'll just have to see." I interpret this second sleeping as the symbolic death of John as referenced in his song Today, where he sings, "Thank you for the lessons I learned while John was sleeping." Now, obviously, John didn't actually die. This is meant to be an internal death, specifically that of his higher self, symbolized by the sun. "I was born in the morning, I died at night." And when he sings the lyrics, "Feelings are goners," it is in the context of the sun being his connection to life. Like in his song One More of Me, where he sings, "Feeling has come from the sun, like most everything and everyone." By rejecting and suppressing that part of himself that was associated with the rock star persona, he inadvertently severed the connection between himself and the world around him, the life force. This moment, where time ran out, also fulfills the foreshadows from the previous song where he sang, "One host is going to teach how to die, and I hear that telling moments divide." The next song, Loss, as we discussed earlier, takes place somewhere around the signing of the record contract with Warner Brothers. The lyrics of this song are also split into two sections. We already discussed the second half, where he sang about the brothers who drove arrows. The first section deals with the events after the symbolic death from the previous song, singing at the end of each section, now that I'm gone, this minute has come and gone, I never said to do anything but forget me. The lyrics seem to be alluding to the idea that because of the death of this part of himself, he was now granted some sort of freedom. There was a time when all was empty, unorganized, a clog, a death scene. Things opened up and there's so many, past a walk, ports of entry, now that I'm gone. The sequence of events from Time Runs Out, Loss, and the next song, Unchanging, create an interesting pattern that appears in the song Sleep from his 2014 album, Enclosure. Deep asleep, need some waking up, time can't see what he does to us. Shadows fall asleep, mind and body breathe, thanks, bastard sun in my eyes. Let's compare the lyrics from Sleep with lyrics found in The Will to Death. There is the initial state of sleep with the lyrics, I've been sleeping all night, followed by an awakening, I was found in a mirror, the effects of time, time runs out, a second sleep takes place, I've been sleeping once and for all, followed by a temporary relief in the song Loss, so many paths to walk now that I'm gone. John experienced this relief during the recording of Blood Sugar Sex Magic. For the recording, the band secluded themselves in a Hollywood Hills mansion to block out all distractions. During this time, John was able to focus on music and be as creative as possible. But the relief he enjoyed was only temporary.
At that time, I had been living life as with art being the number one thing for such a short period of time that to jump out on tour felt terrible because I felt like I was giving up all the artistic part of my life. Because on tour, you only have one artistic hour a day, and that's on stage, and the rest of the day just seems like, why am I alive? I was going through something that, within myself, that being in the music business and doing the grind that takes place on tour didn't go with where I was trying to get within myself, and as far as my relationship to a spiritual sort of a world, or my relationship to the voices that were in my head.
The lyric Bastard Sun in My Eyes is referencing the blinding effect that life had once the band left the mansion and started touring for the album. The issues John experienced during that time is what the next few songs will be about, starting with the next track, Unchanging. The beginning of the song has a short section, sung from the inner perspective, with a call back to the first song, A Doubt, where he's saying, we never go through the sky, we never know when to die. And now he sings, it's a pleasure to die, a pleasure to be gone, into the sky we move on. So now that he's experienced the symbolic death from Time Runs Out, and he's about to go through the sky, he should be happy. But the song shifts to a melancholy mood with the lyrics, life is unchanging, it let me go. Instead of loving the trip through the sky, he sings, I clean up the clouds I ride, I've never been up where I see the others climb. Seems like it must be nice. It sounds like he tried to hide his success and had trouble enjoying the heights that the other members of the band experienced. Another aspect of this resentment of fame is how it affected his perception of himself. In the next song, The Mirror, John touches on this theme with lyrics like, the face in the mirror is not me. John also returns to the theme of not being true to his higher self. You are always out of tune to you, and frustrations with the realization that the symbolic death did not result in the way he wanted. Everyone knows becoming's what you do when you die. A Loop is about his feelings being trapped by the music industry while losing his connection to creativity. He relates the constraints of the business with Dante's version of hell from the Divine Comedy. Icicles are flames in this city. This may seem like a stretch, but considering the name Empyrean was also used by both John and Dante as the name of the highest heaven.
Now, the Empyrean, if I understand it right, means the place of the highest heaven. Is that correct?
I understand it to mean the highest point in heaven.
Here's a quote from Dante describing hell. The deepest isolation is to suffer separation from the source of all light and life and warmth. And this is a perfect quote that connects us back to the line, feelings are goners from Time Runs Out, when we compare the lyric, feelings have come from the sun. With this lyric, he is capturing his separation from the sun and creation. He is stuck in this poisonous city where image is everything and real connection to the creative force is irrelevant. The dramatic ending of the song repeats the lyrics, "I can't wait for life." This expresses both his desperation and the core of his problem. Wishing starts with a playful description of a well-known superstition, the wishing well, to communicate his regret for wishing for success. This first half of the song is sung from the perspective of John, but then switches to the inner perspective with the lyrics, "You never change to fire for your ice." And the inner perspective finally tells John 3 important insights. 1. 'Cause you stayed by going away. This is referring to the dividing aspect of the symbolic death. This was John's coping mechanism while staying in the band. By repressing parts of him that are related to his higher aspects, represented by the sun, the source of all light and life and warmth, he was able to prolong his tenure. 2. Life changes, not you. This is correcting the lyrics from Unchanging, where he's saying, "Life is unchanging, it let me go." But it is in fact life that changes. The external world we perceive is just the outer appearance of the unchanging and eternal inner world. 3. Every time is contained in now. This is also another reference to Unchanging, where he's saying, "And we will show that wherever you are, that is where all time starts." All 3 of these revelations are pointing to John's higher self, the symbolic self, the part of you that is eternal. And in the next song, it sounds like he is finally able to acknowledge his relationship with this part of himself. Far Away is a great example of how interpretation of John's music can vary depending on the listener. I can understand how someone going through a tough relationship could hear this song and immediately relate to the lyrics as a song about troubled love. But it is about his relationship with his higher self. And there are 2 lines that are especially of note. "These dreams are all I have left, I have nothing to spare." These dreams are the ones he mentions in A Doubt, and they are his dream of being a successful musician. It is the only thing he has left of his previous self. He is still clinging to his desire to be a true artist, but he is now realizing that he can't force this relationship and is finally ready to let go with the lyrics, "There's only one way for things to be between you and me." This is John finally getting to the realization that he must quit the band in order to have a proper relationship with the transcendent aspect of his personality. The lyrics of "The Days Have Turned" is from the perspective of John at some point after quitting the band, where he sings, "The lights no longer shine on my head, and people turn away from me, no more do they look to me with respect. And it's the first time, that was fun, now from life I've resigned." He's now embarking on a 6-year drug-induced voyage of self-discovery. At the end of the song, he contrasts the state of mind in a loop where he's saying, "I can't wait for life," with the lyrics, "I'm awaiting life as another man." The next song, Helical, is an instrumental, and it is a musical representation of traveling through the 4th dimension, taking us from the time he left the band in The Days Have Turned to the moment he was recording The Will to Death. The name helical means having the shape or a form of a helix, a spiral, just like in the song The First Season. Keep flowing on a drill, I keep holding on to myself. Be humble, take it the slow way. Finally, we get to the title track, The Will to Death. The song is from John's perspective sometime around the recording of the album. One of the ways John expresses this is by the lyrics, "Limitations are set, only then can we go all the way." This is a great resolution to the lyric in A Doubt where he sings, "One time to play is the time you play for, and you never set a limit." It is a great way to show his personal growth from the beginning to the end of the album. In the song, he also sings about the endless and formless entities that he sometimes refers to as beings from other dimensions. I equate these beings as separate personifications of the creative force. There were lyrics from their perspective throughout the album in examples like "We Dream of Tonight" from A Doubt, "We Make the Music That Divides You" from Loss, and "We Will Show That Wherever You Are, That Is Where All Time Starts" from Unchanging. But there is one central personification that is most important. That version is his higher self and is directly related to the symbol in Time Runs Out, and this channel's namesake, Mirrors Are Water. In episode 1, I talked about how this song, Away and Anywhere, and Central all use the symbol Mirrors Are Water, and I compared it with this quote from Carl Jung, where he too uses the symbol Mirrors Are Water as a poetic description of a person's first encounter with the inner world. Whoever looks into the mirror of the water will see first of all his own face. Whoever goes to himself risks a confrontation with himself. The mirror does not flatter, it faithfully shows whatever looks into it, namely the face we never show to the world because we cover it with the persona, the mask of the actor, but the mirror lies behind the mask and shows the true face. The true face Jung is speaking of is his notion of the self, and I equate it with Frusciante's personification of the creative force that was reflected on the water's surface and time runs out. The concepts of a second transcendent personality and the symbol mirrors or water are not just random thoughts of an eccentric artist. They are profound concepts that can help us better understand our place in the world. I believe John experienced something that transcends the material world, and he tried to capture its essence in his music. The Will to Death is only one example, and there is much more to be said about the album than what I've discussed here. The narrative I tried to convey is only the starting point. I will be returning to these songs along with songs from other albums, as I continue my investigation into these topics. Thanks for watching.